Welcome to We Are Libertarians. I am your host, Chris Spangle. To my right is Greg Lenz.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. And joining us is comedian Stewart Huff. Stewart,
hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing just good. It's freezing cold, and we got inside, and now I feel much better.
Yeah, I missed one key aspect of setting up this interview, contacting the comedy club and saying, hey, yeah, that is actually a go. Can we get in at 5 o'clock? So that is
Right.
my fault. But they rushed here and let us in. Morty's Comedy Joint in Indianapolis. It's my favorite comedy joint in the city, and I love them dearly. So check it out if you're here in town. You'll actually be performing here tonight.
That is correct.
So you're a traveling comedian.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much my whole gig, my whole job of 48 weeks a year around in that area.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how much time do you spend at home through the week?
It depends. It really depends. This particular trip, I'll be out on the road about 2.5 weeks, and then I'll go home for a day and a half.
Wow.
And go back out for 4 days. You know, so usually I'm home at least 1 day a week. Sometimes it's 3. You know, and then I take off because I have a relationship, so I'll take her birthday off or Christmas, Valentine's Day, that kind of thing.
Right.
Back when I was a single man, there were multiple years. It was 52 straight weeks.
Wow.
So
Wow. I mean, does that wear on you traveling that much?
it wears on me when I'm not.
Okay.
That's how addicted I am. It's like it's very strange. If I'm home for more than a week, then sometimes, and this is one of those embarrassing things to admit because it is kind of bizarre. But if I'm home, especially you're getting into that 10-day area where I haven't driven my car more than 5 hours, I have gotten in my car, gotten on the interstate, driven 2 hours north, turned around, driven back home again.
Really?
Yeah.
So what is it about driving that you need?
I think it's the solitude. I don't have anybody in the car with me, rarely, So it's the solitude, and especially on a nice, clear, open road when I'm not fighting downtown traffic. My brain, it's like being in the shower for a long time. My brain just goes, and I begin thinking without thinking. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
It's just wandering, and if I don't get that on a regular basis, then I need it.
Yeah, I've actually read that in neuroscience, you need those periods where you shut your brain down because in our modern society, when we're using the phone all the time, you're constantly checking something, thinking about something, doing something. And so we miss that period of critical thinking where when you're driving, when you're in the shower, when you're just not doing anything, you're not engaging your brain, that's when your brain starts to think up creative ideas.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's key to your work.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of freedom, letting my brain go, is where I really come up with ideas, perfect ideas, maybe correct errors, whatever it is. But when I sit down in front of a piece of paper or in front of a computer and I'm actually engaged in it, they rarely come. I have to let myself go and just not try, and then it comes.
So we could get into how you got into comedy and talk about the process of comedy and all that. I'm totally fascinated with it. It's part of why I love what I do. But we wanted to have you on because you are a comedian that you don't just go up and tell. You tell jokes and your show is very funny, but you're more of a storyteller. And the clips that I've seen and when I've caught pieces of your show, you really talk about larger ideas.
Yes, definitely.
And it is a lot of philosophy and religion and politics and human behavior. And I think that's really fascinating, personally, and I know that our audience will as well. I mean, so how did you start to... let's talk about what shaped you. Let's start at the beginning. I mean, how... Are you an autodidact? Are you the type of person that is just constantly learning about the subjects that you talk about?
I think that this will make sense, and I think this is the best way to the most honest way to say it. I don't think I'm a very smart person. I think I'm a very curious person, and I'm willing and extremely excited when I have a curious thought about learning about it. So I would end up thinking something, whatever it is, and then I'll get on my computer and I'll read books and I'll talk to someone. And I've emailed people. I've emailed sociologists at some college just randomly and said, "Hey, I was thinking about this the other day. What do you think?" Blah 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 blah. And occasionally I'll get a response from people, and I'm just curious. That's it. So then my curiosity leads me to want to know something about a topic. I'm thinking about the drug situation in this country. We have more people behind bars than any other country on the planet. Why? And 82% drug related offenses. So then I don't know where this thought came from, but I thought, in a wider sense, why do humans need to do drugs? And then I went from there to, are we the only ones? Next thing you know, I'm researching animal drug use,
Right.
And I find out that monkeys get drunk as hell. Elephants love to get drunk. There's fruit ferments, falls on the ground, turns into alcohol. There are YouTube videos literally of wasted elephants, and right next to them are lions that are just rolling around drunk.
I gotta look this up.
Oh,
This is amazing. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Right.
Yeah.
I got to tell you the story. I read this researching this topic. The reindeer herders, right? There's a It's already funny. There's a hallucinogenic mushroom that grows, and the reindeer, hunt it out and eat it, but it's poisonous to humans. But the reindeer eat it and literally trip, and then when they urinate, the herders collect it, and their bodies have filtered out all the poisons. But the toxin, the hallucinogenic process is still there. So then the herders drink the reindeer urine, and then they trip. And then when they urinate into the snow, the reindeer eat the yellow snow and trip again.
Circle of life.
It's circle of life.
Hakuna Matata.
Right. And this stuff is fascinating to me. So then I'm so interested in that topic that it will come out of me on stage. Whether it's funny, don't know. Don't really care. It's fascinating. I'll make it funny,
Yeah.
And then I don't know why my brain is like this, but at some point we are willing to drink reindeer urine to get high. And you think the threat of jail time is going to stop that?
And who is the first person to drink reindeer urine?
Right. Who thought of this? Right. Yeah. This stuff, and so that's where my comedy comes from, is not, let me see what I need to say to make the crowd laugh. Let me interest myself first. Mm-hmm. Let me make this like, oh, wow. It's almost like you guys are just buddies, and I can't wait to tell you what I just learned. And then I've got to get down to work and figure out where's the punchlines in this, and what's the overall point I'm trying to make. How does this go with my example? Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
So that's kind of my process.
Yeah, Tim Wilson was one of my comedy heroes, and if our listeners don't know who Tim Wilson is, please go and look him up on YouTube. He sadly passed away about 2 years ago, I think it was. And he is the quintessential example of input and output. The more you input into your mind, the better your output is going to be. And his business happened to be comedy. So he was able to take his knowledge. As he was on the road, he was constantly learning. He was obsessed with conspiracy theories and the JFK assassination and serial killers.
Hilarious.
He wrote a book.
Right. He wrote a book, yeah.
A serious book.
And but I don't know if you know this, but Tim and I had the same manager.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I did probably, I don't know, I'm going to guess 200 shows with Tim.
Oh, wow.
And I saw Tim do some of the most beautiful, horrific things I've ever seen a comedian do. And I learned a lot from that man. Especially comedically, I don't think anybody has ever taught me more than Tim.
And I hear that from where I work. Tim was very important at the Bob and Tom show and a regular on the show and helped so many comedians. And I hear about Tim Wilson more than anybody else. I learned so much from that guy. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a key point, a key takeaway, I think, from what you're talking about, is how do you create a curious mind? How do you ingest information? Because when you do that, the output in whatever your career is, your relationships are, it all comes out. Like if you're constantly stuffing your brain with information, and signals, it's going to come out. I mean, so were you just born curious, or how did you develop that curiosity and discipline of learning, of self-learning?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I have an honest, I don't know if I actually know the answer to that. And I think maybe that sentence I just said is exactly where it comes from, because I question what I believe. I question everything my parents taught me, everything. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying I question it. I mean, they taught me a fat man brings me toys and a fairy gives me money for my teeth. From here on out, I'm going to need evidence.
Right.
You know? So if someone says something to me, tells me a story or tells me something that they believe, I don't automatically think they're stupid. Sometimes I do. But, you know, in other words, if someone comes at me with an opinion that's opposite of mine, I don't think that person is stupid. I'm just wondering where they got that.
Right.
And then next thing you know, I'm on my phone looking it up. I'm interested. I'm in a truck stop. I'll give you an example. I'm in a truck stop a month and a half, 2 months ago, maybe something like that. And there were two guys. I was eavesdropping is what was going on. I was listening to this guy's conversation.
Right.
You know, two guys were talking about the police brutality situation that we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And one guy said, I got the answer. Let's just kill them all and let God sort it out. Now, for whatever reason, when he said that, I thought to myself, who originally said that? Because that sounds like a quote, you know?
Right.
Doesn't it? We've all heard that
phrase.
phrase.
It's a colloquial phrase that is commonly used, that is, very common.
Right.
Yeah.
Next thing you know...
Especially amongst Fox News listeners.
Right. Next thing you know, I'm researching that phrase just because I had a thought. I know this. I've heard the phrase before. I know this dude didn't invent it. Who originally said it? So now I want to know. I'm curious. And I researched that, and then I researched the thing that led me to that, and then the next thing, you know. So
who is the originator of that, or is it attributed to?
No, it's attributed to, now that you put me on the spot, I can't remember his name. It's a Catholic priest. It was a religious war. Catholics and Protestants were killing each other, and the Catholic priest said, slaughter them all, supposedly. And then his right-hand man said, some of them are Catholics, we would be killing our own. And he said, quote, kill them all, the Lord knoweth which belong to him. So that's where it started.
Right.
So then I take that and I turn that into a joke where, you know, I'm talking about what in the area in my act right now that I'm talking about we seem to be so bad at problem solving. We seem to identify something we don't like, you know. We try one solution to fix it. And if that solution doesn't work, we just keep doing that solution
bigger and
over and over and over.
If we just put more money towards it.
Right. I mean, I think we're more intelligent than one solution. Let's try several.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Maybe.
Yeah. So anyway, that guy says kill them all, let God sort it out. I researched, find out who originally said it, and then I can make a joke. You know, violence to stop violence isn't working. He said that in 1209. I heard it in a Flying J last Tuesday.
Right.
800 years should be our statute of limitation on one solution. Let's try another one now.
But it is totally fascinating, and I have I don't know where I learned it, but I just started to figure out along the way, and it's similar to the tooth fairy of what you just talked about. You know, we have these scripts that are built into our lives that, you know, your parents tell you need to go to college, but you don't want to go to college, but you go to college because your parents want you to. Or the church says you should do this. Or political correctness says you should do this. Or your friends think that this is the direction for your life. And so many people live their entire lives untrue to themselves and who they are, and they never really even stop to think about these scripts that control their life and these opinions that control their life that they may not agree with. They're almost scared to think about those things, because if I think about it, I might have to start working. I might have to start thinking. I might have to start examining.
It's easier not to.
It's that principle of certainty. You know, once you have that, once you get used to the ambiguity of being uncertain, then you can, you know, be a skeptic or, you know, suspend judgment and actually look at something. But it's so much easier to just say, you know, I'm a computer, load this software on, and I'll complete this task.
And I'll tell you, at 32, it is shocking how few people are remarkable. and how
I like that sentence. That was a very nice sentence.
And how easy it is to excel at anything because so many people don't try.
Don't try. Yeah, just do what they're told, and then they'll put phrases like "think outside the box." You know? Yeah, but that's already pre-sold at Target with a frame. You know, I mean, come on,
right?
And I think that's what it is, and that's the interesting life to me. Is I don't even believe my own beliefs. You know,
Right.
I'm going to question myself, where it comes from, because like I was having a conversation with my father. We're opposite. You know, but we have good conversations. We're both rational, and we like to talk, and we like to listen.
Right.
So we have good conversations. So my dad had said to me, he said, "Son, the other day, a friend of mine who I've known for 30 years failed a drug test at work." So I said to him, "What drugs do you do?" And he said, "I like to smoke marijuana on the weekends." And my dad was just shocked, just stunned. He said, "Son, I've known this guy for forever, and I guess there's more people smoking marijuana than I thought there was."
Right.
You know? So I said to my dad, because I'd done a little bit of research in this animal drug thing I was researching, you know? I told my
There's
dad.
this reindeer urine, Dad.
right. Dad, let me turn you on. At one point when the government was deciding which drugs were going to be illegal, you know, there was a list. At one point, caffeine was on the list, but marijuana was not. And then they switched them, you know. So I said to my dad, what if caffeine had stayed on the list and marijuana had not? And you were sitting here saying to me, there's a guy I've known for 30 years. He drinks coffee on the weekend, you know. But if caffeine had stayed on the list, then he would be saying that, and he would feel just as shocked and devastated. So just because some humans decided here's the drugs arbitrarily that we're going to put on this list, that affects all of our opinions about those drugs.
Right.
So it's on some level, it's all bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
So that's always in my head. So, you know, I'm fascinated, and I'm not a drug user, but I'm fascinated by our opinions of them. Where did they come from? Who put that in my brain? You know, that type of thinking goes back to Tim Wilson. You're going to learn all sides, you know, arm yourself with knowledge.
I think that's key. In this day and age, it's exhausting, but you have to. You have to be able to argue your opponent's argument better than they can.
Yeah.
You have to understand.
And also
fully
listen to their argument better than they listen to you.
Right.
You know, which I think is another
tough
weapon.
To create that type of environment where you can have two very informed individuals that are having an honest discussion and not turn political,
Not
and
turn
cheap shots.
emotional. And,
and someone seizes the moment with a gotcha question and they win the debate.
Yeah, but I feel like people are starving for it. I mean, I obviously we see from our audience that people are starving for alternative opinions or an in-depth examination. I mean, we at the beginning of 4 years ago tried to keep this to an hour, so we thought nobody will ever listen to this if it goes beyond 20 minutes even.
Yeah.
And now people are mad if it's not 2 hours.
Yeah,
because people want the full examination. People are starting to crave crave information.
Yeah.
Unfiltered information.
And that's what, you know, my comedy is, it's not normal. It's not standard everyday run-of-the-mill comedy. When I'm writing it, I'm not even thinking about whether they're not going to like it or not. I'm thinking, wow, they're going to be so amazed when they hear this piece of information. Because I just automatically, I walk in the door assuming that if you're in this club to see a show, then you're open-minded and intelligent and ready to laugh and have a good time. That's just the way I approach it.
Right.
You know, when you prove me wrong, then we'll adjust and, you know, not my material, but we'll argue with each other or something, you know?
Yeah.
But I have to approach it that way. But people will say, because I don't do like sex jokes or just dumb kind of comedy, which I like that kind of comedy sometimes. Sometimes it's hilarious, you know, but it's not what I do. And I've had people that say to me, well, I'm not hiring you because it's too smart. I don't. Well, then close the club. I mean, I have a public Kentucky education. If I'm able to outsmart your club, you shouldn't be in business.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's just a club saying we don't know how to market.
Yeah.
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 And again, it just shows you how unremarkable in the industry. I mean, there's, people who just don't know what they're doing. and
aren't willing to take a chance.
Or work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they automatically expect that their audience or their customer base is the lowest common denominator.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's true. I hear it all the time in my business where people will say, like, I'll have a bit that sometimes runs 10 or 12 minutes on one topic, and people will say, well, people don't have attention spans for that. That's a lie. You're not giving them anything to have attention span about.
Right.
At least trust them first and let them prove themselves dumb before you just think that they're dumb. Give them something to fail at,
I feel like we are not going to be able to put you in a political box, and we typically don't do that anyways. I mean, we're the worst libertarians most of the time, but so where do you fall on the political spectrum, or can you even quantify it?
I've been told more times than not from people that they think of me as a progressive. I don't identify politically at all. I have opinions on about everything, but most of my opinions are, I want a severe education overhaul. I want true education, which is controversial and truthful.
Mm-hmm.
Exposed to all sides.
Yeah, I want to show all sides.
Right.
I want to challenge. Here's all the facts we've gathered. Take them all, put them in your head. You figure out what you think.
See, that's a very libertarian idea because
right? Yeah, absolutely.
Because the more choices somebody has, the harder that everybody works, and the more productivity that we get out of people.
Mm-hmm. It's a very libertarian point of view, but the education system we have now is like, well, you're going to talk about Thanksgiving. I mean, the truth about Thanksgiving is, genocide's hard to discuss. So let's just make some hand turkeys.
Right.
I'm against that.
Yeah.
I want open, especially in a university setting. Oh my gosh, it should just be, students should be shocked out of their brains.
Yeah.
So I definitely have some libertarian bent to me, definitely.
Yeah, I saw you talk about on YouTube warning labels. If it was at your website, stewarthuff.net. It's STEWARTHUFF.net.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about warning labels.
Yeah.
Which was a very libertarian bit.
Right.
About letting God sort it all out.
Right. I saw in Canada, I was working in Canada, and this is the dumbest warning label I've ever seen. It was on a ski lift, and it said, warning, some natural hazards might not have warning signs. And
are you serious?
I swear. I promise you. I didn't make that up. That was a sign in the ground that was paid for by the government.
Let's be frank. You couldn't make that up.
Yeah, I know. I mean, come on. And I just stared at that thinking, really? This is the point we're at? We're going to label nature now. We have to label nature. This is
tree's
great.
branches may fall.
Right.
Hit you.
A warning.
We're
air.
sorry.
Yeah.
So, and it all stemmed from that. And then I started researching and started thinking about it. Are warning labels really helping us as a species? They might be helping one particular person, but are they helping us as a species? And I gave it a lot of thought and read about it and wrote a bit about it. So
social Darwinism,
right? And people didn't. I didn't write about it like, well, I'm gonna write a libertarian bit. I wrote my feelings and my opinions and gathered information, and then here's what I feel about this particular thing. And it is a very libertarian bit. I've had NPR, a local NPR station I was on, they played the bit, and then they said, please welcome libertarian Stewart Huff.
Well, we always maintain that if people remove themselves from watching nothing but television news and start to think on their own and think critically, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, that they're going to find more libertarian solutions, that they're going to realize they have more in common with us than they think, but everybody's so stuck in the tyranny of the binary where we only have two choices. Mm-hmm. And it just creates this paralysis in our country where people are afraid. Mm-hmm. And fear's a very serious problem. And that's where the warning labels come from. We talk all the time about You have no guarantee that you will return to your home safely at the end of the day, and there is no government solution that will maintain that is a certainty.
Right? No, absolutely not. It's not going to happen. You could never guarantee that. My thing, like I've got a piece right now that I'm doing where, because my show that I've written that I'm currently doing has a lot of history in it. A lot of history, a lot of obscure historical assassinations. Actually, is what it is. Yeah. So, and it kind of at the end as a summation, I'm saying, and I'm also talking a lot about belief systems in this show, and I'm literally saying the word belief systems, which is not funny in a comedy club.
Right. You don't hear Larry the Cable Guy talking about it. Right.
But
oh God.
But I want to talk about belief systems because I think they're important, and I think people ought to start analyzing their own, a little more. But I have a piece at the end where I'm saying, if history has taught us anything, I think we're all wrong. Some of us are more wrong than others. Mm-hmm. But none of us have all the answers. That's impossible. There's stuff that human beings will discover in the next 500 years that you and I can't even fathom.
Right.
Science fiction can't even guess at what we're going to discover in the next 1,000. Are you kidding? So just the knowledge that we do not possess all the facts should leave us some area to say, I don't know, but here's what I feel. Here's what I've read.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, young Stewart Huff or young Chris Spangle could never have fathomed the iPhone.
No, absolutely not. Even if you would have sat there and with your phone, especially if you were rich and you had the long cord where you could stretch it all the way across the kitchen, if you would have done that, and I said, now stop right here. What do you think this device is going to look like in 50 years? You might have had some crazy guess, but it wouldn't have been what we are holding in our hands now. Right here, while we're talking, you can send a quick little message to someone in Russia.
What if I told you could get midget porn on your rotary phone in 500 years?
Or, whatever you're into.
Right. Literally, rule number 34.
Right. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I definitely have some libertarian bent to me, and progressive stuff, but most of it I'm disappointed with. I don't like, but I think it's better than it was, without a doubt. But,
yeah. One thing that is often misunderstood is that, libertarians want the same thing that a progressive, that a conservative. We all want the same thing. We want less war. We want less murder. We want less death. It's just, how do we get there, and what's how much government is necessary to achieve those ends.
Yep.
It's not necessarily the survival of the fittest, although that's what it is, whether the government's big or not.
It will, and it'll always be that way. Kind of what I hear you talk about when you say progressive, is it that when you think about things, is it that society should move to a point, or that the way we're doing it now prohibits it, and I think that's stupid? Like, are you an advocate of actually taking action and moving us towards something, or is it just, this is absurd? Clearly there's many other solutions that a quick Google search will lead us to. Why are we doing it this way?
Well, I think it would depend on each topic. I think that my overall frustration is, how do I explain this? Is like, we seem to do the same thing over and over to fix it. If we all say, okay, let's just say we do not want these drugs. We don't want people to do these drugs. Okay, well, we could argue whether we want them to or not, but let's just say we all want, and then we tried making them illegal to stop it. Clearly, it's not working.
Right.
You can buy drugs in prison. The place we send you for buying drugs, you can buy drugs there.
Right.
We give you a scholarship to become better at it.
Right. Clearly, that solution isn't working. But once you tell a group of humans, here's what we're going to do to fix it, then you can't change that solution, because now it's ingrained in their belief system, So if you told someone Sweden has had more success with giving away free heroin that they have with trying to make it illegal and people breaking into cars and breaking into houses, well, that's unacceptable in our culture, because now we can't change that because of belief systems. I want a more open-minded society. I want to say, let's get a bunch of people together and throw some solutions at this. Let's try another one.
Should we even just leave it alone because clearly none of it's working, and is it worth the cost anyway?
And I would put that on the board.
Yeah.
And say, okay, Chris, what are your thoughts on? Put that on the. Let's get some stuff going. Let's look at different solutions. If this one isn't working, let's try another one. Is that a progressive way of thinking or libertarian? What do you think?
I think it's both. I think that this is an area where progressive and a libertarian would overlap. There's a documentary, The House I Live In. I recommend it like literally every podcast since I saw it 2 years ago, and it's. Basically examines the belief system, and because we have destroyed the economy, the only economy for the bottom 10% in our economic system is drugs. Mm-hmm. And so then we have just found a way to warehouse and then profit off of the warehousing of the bottom 10% of our population. And to ensure that that economic system persists, we have turned drug users into the essentially the Jews in Nazi Germany. They're, if you're a drug user, you're bad.
You're bad. That's it. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
You're good or bad. It's bad.
Right.
We've labeled
there's no
you.
gray.
We've grouped you.
Yeah.
We built you this camp.
We just have a society that has no room for gray.
Exactly. The heroin addict that is sleeping in the cold tonight, that may or may not freeze to death or overdose tonight, is the exact same as Billie Holiday, who was the greatest singer that ever lived, arguably. They're all bad because they did drugs. It's a ridiculous, childish, monkey view of the world.
Right.
It's not true. There's no facts involved in that. We need to point that out and say we need to stop thinking about it this way and start thinking about it another way.
And the way the
How else are you
libertarian
going to fix the problem?
would talk about that is that, like, it's very easy to sell. They're a drug user, they're bad. Mm-hmm. You don't do drugs, you're good.
Right.
The opposites are the easiest sell to get people incensed and demand solutions to or get worked up about.
Right. And then you use fear to make sure that other solutions are not tried.
Yeah.
The bad people will get more freedom and hurt you.
Right, and
You
then you're
can
just
feel
controlling people with fear. But it's the same. But there's so many examples. Like the South is racist, the North is not. Mm-hmm. Total crap.
Right.
Total crap. There were lynchings in Duluth, Minnesota.
Yeah. No. One of the Indiana is the only state to ever elect a Klan governor.
Yeah, I know.
He's buried in Tennessee.
Ed Jackson.
Ed Jackson. I read a book about him.
Yeah.
That was he was caught with an African American woman, right?
Uh-huh.
And he said, and openly, I'm a Klan member. Elect me. Indiana elect him.
Yeah. Because of D.C. Stevenson, if you don't know, we'll fill you in on him afterwards, but D.C. Stevenson was a horrific human being. Muncie, Indiana, Marion, Indiana, northeastern Indiana was a hotbed of racist activity. There were more lynchings in Indiana in that period than there were in some southern states.
Yeah.
But
to say the South is racist and the North is not makes it teachable, makes it easy. It's easy to control people's minds, all that stuff. And it just makes everything black or white, It's like I just read this, a man did a 10-year study interviewing homeless people in California. Huge percentage of them are veterans. Huge.
Support of troops.
Yeah, and so now, if all troops are good and all homeless are bad, we got to, how you going to deal with this?
We
when
can't
they
have
overlap.
bad homeless veterans.
Right. So what we decide to do with it is just ignore it.
So how do we start to humanize each other?
That's a very good question, but I got to be honest, and I know it's sad, but I don't have a lot of hope. I really don't. I don't think we're going to make it, to be honest with you. But I'm not. That doesn't mean I'm not willing to fight. Mm-hmm. We're worth fighting for, I think. I'm going to tell you this. The closer I'm doing right now on this show, and did you see that? You might have seen this, but
I did. I think I saw it at Crossroads Comedy Festival.
I'm not going to do the bit. I'm just going to tell your listeners what happened. Just the straight story of what happened. I was driving in my car.
Yeah. This is beautiful.
I was driving in my car, and it was very flat. I believe it was Nebraska. It was very flat, and there was a car in front of me, right, who was weaving, and not I just dropped my cell phone, kind of jerked the wheel weave. This was his car, it would slowly go to the middle of the interstate and straddle the center lane for about 2 miles, and then kind of merge back and go over the rumble strip. It was just, so I was staying far back from this guy, keeping my eye on him. All of a sudden, his car left the interstate, not on an exit, the car just veered off the interstate, went right through a field, and without thinking, I stopped my car and got out and started running towards his car. Just left the interstate, and I just ran towards it. And there were other people running too, and we got there and opened the door, and they were bloody. They had went through this and hit their head and everything. So we got them out of the car. Ambulances came and picked them up, and it was just crazy, chaotic, just like that. And, my heart was racing like crazy, and the ambulances took them off. And then there's 12 human beings that don't know each other, total strangers. We're in a field in Nebraska, and we all had one thing in common. We ran towards someone that needed help. And so we all just stood there awkwardly making small talk, and as slowly we walked back to our cars, and then I got into my car and I began to start it up, but I stopped because the most amazing thing to me occurred right at that moment. I was about to start my car. It occurred to me when that car left the interstate, none of us knew if they were male or female, black or white, gay or straight, transgender. We knew nothing. We didn't know if they were conservatives or Democrats. We knew not one fact was known about these people. The car just left the interstate, and 12 humans stopped and ran towards that vehicle, And I was just so happy at that point. I thought maybe there's a chance, Maybe there's a chance. I might disagree with every single thing that driver does in his life or thinks or believes. But at the end of the day, I think that we should care about each other, Now,
and I think we do.
Huh?
I think we do until, like, for instance, the Libertarian, when I hear you tell that story, it's there was no government protection or government program in that moment of emergency. It was just people helping people.
Human, and that's what I called a friend of mine. I was sitting in there in the car, guys, and I was so giddy because in my life, I see a lot of people like yelling at each other, and there's a lot of, someone cuts you off and then flips you the bird.
Right.
And you're like, come on, man, don't, And I see a lot of that stuff, and it just depresses me about humanity in general. And I was sitting there in my car thinking, there it was, I just saw it. 12 human beings dropped their own belief system and ran to help each other, And I called a friend of mine from the car, and I was telling her all about it. I was so excited, and she goes, "Oh my gosh!" There were 2 men, by the way, in the car, 2 grown men, and she said those 2 men had guardian angels looking over them, and I deleted her from Facebook, because screw that guardian angel. I mean, guys, I have no clue if guardian angels exist. I don't know, but I know one thing: in that moment in Nebraska, 12 human beings gave a shit about each other.
Yeah,
that's what I know for a fact. And that's what I want to see more of,
And libertarians believe, ultimately, that what the government does is forces us to choose sides and defend our belief systems unnecessarily. Even though that's the ultimate outcome. I mean, at the beginning, I really honestly believe that all politicians start from a place of good intentions. And they want to protect their belief systems. But what ends up happening is that we turn into this tribalistic society. And I think this moment in human history, if you study human history, is one of the greatest times in all of humanity to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
And humans are starting to love each other more and more and more. But there's still a hell of a long way to go. And we just have this pessimistic view of society and each other right now that is so depressing, when we really should be optimistic about the future, because compared to the past, it's pretty good.
It's pretty incredible, especially if you look at the percentage of chance that the 3 of us in this room right now will die of old age is pretty high. You go back to 1500, whoa, that number drops significantly. Right. You go back 1300 and it plummets, The chances of us, I mean, it's getting safer and safer and safer. It might not feel like it, but it is.
Right.
It's getting safer. Also, the period of time where the Catholic Church or any church could convict you of heresy for what you're saying on this podcast and sentence you to death, that's done. In this country anyway, that's over.
Right.
The government and the church can no longer do that to you. So it's getting better and better and better, Are we going to make it? I don't know.
Define make it.
Make it would be and this is totally from my belief system, okay? Make it would be an ingrained knowledge that we live on a planet with each other, and we all deserve respect, you know? So throwing trash out of your, anything from like, just, disrespecting your neighbor, noise violations, minor things like that, all the way from that to someone seriously violated your belief system, but they still deserve your respect, To me, that I guess that's what I would consider making it. Like a building, this is going to sound really hippie-ish, okay? Mm-hmm. But some kind of foundation of respect and love for each other as human beings, If someone is, let's say a heroin addict breaks into my house, right, and steals my stuff, my gut reaction is I'm mad. I want revenge. Ultimately, once the gut reaction goes away, what I want is that behavior to stop. I want someone to stop breaking into the house just to get what they need.
Right.
Like I have a mentally handicapped sister, right? The only fights in my life that I've ever initiated was when people would make fun of her. Mm-hmm. And I would just go blind and just like attack them, until I realized it's the same people. I'm attacking the same 3 people all the time. In other words, me attacking them isn't changing their behavior.
Right.
What I want is for them to stop making fun of her. But I'm punching them in the face, and they're still making fun of her.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not a deterrent that I was hoping for.
Right. So I need another solution.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess that would be my thing about making it. Can we get to that point? A respect for each other.
No, I just, when I hear you talk, it's like you've reached a level of self-awareness a lot of people lack. So you're able to, look at your own actions, your own beliefs from outside looking in. And I think that's one of the most difficult things for anyone that doesn't expose themselves to outside beliefs. And it's the same thing as looking at like history. This is a great time to live. That's an outsider's perspective looking in.
Right, yeah.
In the course of human events. And a lot of that comes to the fact of education. And you've learned the ability to hold to issues and look at what your beliefs are as an object, not who you are. Mm-hmm. And the way to bring that's coming together, in my opinion, is you look at the world's being more connected through internet exposure to information. I mean, ISIS recruits on Twitter. Right. It's inevitable those recruits are going to encounter information that conflicts. It can get nasty when it looks like the information is conflicting and, people are asking you to draw lines. But I think in time, society sort of weaves itself back together, hopefully, where there is a humanization. And it's, listen, our leaders suck. They're the ones that want to, turn the sand, make it glow. Uh-huh. Or they want to attack the Twin Towers in the name of Allah. But the reality is we're just 2 individuals trying to get through in this world.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough for us to put ourselves in each other's shoes. It's you want to say, listen, when we bomb a wedding using drones and kill 15 innocent people in Yemen, it's hard for us to say to our neighbors and our friends on Facebook, like, we should respect those people as human beings, because we're ultimately talking to people who have road rage, people who don't understand the humanity of the people that are standing right in front of them. And it's, I worked in politics for 10 years before I started at Bob and Tom.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was the executive director of the Libertarian Party of Indiana, worked at a news talk station. I was a reporter. Then I went to work at as a marketing place for the Libertarian Party. Mm-hmm. And so, I was really in the trenches. And then I kind of stepped away and lived a normal life for the last 3 years. And I used to think that if I could just out-persuade a Republican or a Democrat, I could win. Mm-hmm. And after I got divorced 2 years ago and, started going to therapy and started, learning a lot more about myself. And to me, a lot of what we talk about on this podcast anymore is emotions and self-awareness and philosophy and the golden rule.
Right.
Because we're back to remedial education with grown adults, and I'm not slamming our listeners. It's just what I experience, and it's what I need to say and what I need to express. Love your neighbor, and that's the most effective outreach to persuade people, is to treat them like a human being with respect.
Human being. Yeah, absolutely. I was this made me so happy. I pulled over on the road and was in a real crappy gas station. One of those that you're not sure if you want to use the bathroom here.
Right. You're going to need penicillin after you whip your dick out.
Right, yeah. But I had to go, so I just went in and I was peeing, and I look up and someone had written. I like reading graffiti, and 99% of it is horrendous. But what I like about it is, boy, people feel like they're strangers. They're not anonymity. Yeah. So they can really get nasty. They can use all the un-PC words. They can, So you're looking at someone's real gut nasty feeling. But right in the center of this horrific gas station, someone wrote, "Love thy everybody," and I was like, "What a great thing!" I think it's going to have to get to that, or we're not going to make it. I think because we can argue about how to fix a problem, like you guys said earlier. I think the majority of people want the same ending. Mm-hmm. How to get there is what we're arguing about. So if we can at least acknowledge that we want the same thing, that's a start of understanding.
Yeah.
That's when my father and I, our relationship completely took on a different level. When he said to me, "Son, sounds like we want the same thing. It's just I'm right about how to get there and you're not." Right. And I laughed and he laughed. That's his sense of humor. But I thought, you're right. If we want the same solution, then why are we so mad at each other?
Kill each other on how to get there.
On how to get there. Let's, I think we're going to have to start at that base.
Yeah, I think Brene Brown is a philosopher. I don't know if you've heard of Brene Brown. Mm-hmm. She's a researcher on shame and fear, and I think that she's incredibly important for anybody who's interested in politics. Just in your life. I mean, she's really changed a lot of how I look at things in terms of being more vulnerable, being more open, being more expressive with what I want and more direct. And it's led to a better life. Being more open and not trying so hard to protect my ego has totally changed my political views.
Yeah.
And how I go about politics too. So yeah, I think that's how we get there is so often the focus of our arguments, as opposed to we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think if we can start as a society to get to a place where we all recognize that we want the same thing, then things start to get better.
Yeah, I think if you're having a political discussion with someone and you're clearly not close, you're arguing, and when it starts to get heated and emotional, to me, that's when now it's not even worth it.
Yeah.
Because the facts are now dissipating. There's fewer and fewer of them.
Each side's more ingrained.
Yeah, and the heat is starting to come out.
Right.
If you can say to the person across from you, whoa, calm down. So you don't want, drug addicts to break into your house, and I don't want drug addicts to break in my house. So let's start there.
Yeah.
Find common ground. Whatever it is you're talking about, find common ground, and then go from there. It's like starting from just acknowledging that you're both thinking human beings, because if you start from the other way, you're never going to get to that,
Right.
All the predispositions you have just from experiences in life make it impossible unless you start at the very foundation.
Yeah. And that's, according to a philosopher, it's a lot easier when you have 100 people in your town.
Right.
That's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to deal with the town drunk because that's Ed. But now the town drunk is 2,500 people or however big your town is, and you don't know these people. Then now there's a lot of fear in that.
And I have to spend my tax dollars just so that guy can have a place, and I hate those lazy SOBs. And,
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And they're no longer human.
When it's Ed, you might actually let him sleep in your garden shed because you know the dude.
His story.
Well, we got to wrap up because you've talked for 50 minutes here, and you've got to talk for 50 minutes later. So we want to be respectful of your time. But thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you guys for inviting me. I think it's a fantastic podcast, and I'm excited to know that people are listening to it. You know, because you're not. You know what I mean? It's thought provoking. You're not just jumping around in a clown costume doing farts.
Yeah, no, that's what I do in my day job.
Right,
right. So please check out Stewart Huff. You're on. This is shameless self promotion time. Tell people where they can find you, what they should buy from you, how they can support you.
Let's see. I'm very bad at shameless self promotion, but here goes. I've a website you mentioned. Thank you, StewartHuff.com or .net.
.net, yeah.
Yeah, .net.
I saw .net today.
Okay, yeah, .net is
Google Stewart Huff.
Okay, Stewart Huff, Stewart. I'm on iTunes. You can get my CDs if you want the physical copy. Then you can get that through my website. My last CD is called Stewart Huff Probably, and that's the one I like the best. It's basically an hour argument for the definition of human beings, which I define as scared, curious poets.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So check him out, and obviously he's traveling around the country, so he'll be, if he's not in an area near you soon, he will be within the next 48 weeks. So
absolutely.
So stay tuned, and next time you come through Indy, please let us know. We'd love to talk to you again.
Most definitely.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
No,
I'll definitely look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, thanks. All right, thanks for listening to this episode of We're Libertarians.